Hello, my friend. This is Greg Hennett bringing you more Water from the Rock. Today's message is titled, A Very Unlikely Miracle Worker. When Jesus arrived at Bethany, everyone was in a low condition, very low. Mary and Martha's relatives were in mourning. Their Jewish neighbors were grieved and puzzled. Martha was offended with Jesus. Even Mary, who loved Jesus and His Word so much, was offended with Him. So much so that she didn't even rise to meet Him when He first arrived in Bethany. And Lazarus, well, he was dead. So it was miracle time, and Jesus had the power to work one, if only He could find a willing, believing, brave human channel through whom He could work. His apostles were with Him, and He had already sent them on very successful preaching and healing campaigns. So they were the natural choice. We would have chosen one of Jesus' inner circle, Peter, James, or John, to do this job. Uniquely trained and privileged, they had experienced Jesus' visible divine glory on the Mount of Transfiguration. They had watched Him raise Jairus' daughter from death and revive the widow of Nain's son. Any one of these three, uniquely called and gifted apostolic leaders, would have been our first selection to go to Lazarus' tomb with Jesus, help him raise him from 4 days of entombment and considerable physical decay, and then return to Mary and Martha and all their friends and relatives with great joy. But Jesus did not choose them. Our next choice would have been one of the other 9 apostles. They too had had extensive miracle-working experience when Jesus sent them, bearing His authority and power to preach and heal and deliver in His name. And they too had often watched in wonder as He worked every kind of deliverance and healing imaginable, including opening the eyes of a man born blind. Surely they could revive Lazarus and restore joy to Bethany, but Jesus didn't choose the 9 either. We would have then turned to the other 70 also, described in Luke chapter 10, verse 1, since they too were specially chosen messengers of the Messiah and sent 2 by 2 before His face into every village where He would come and work miracles. Jesus could have sent a runner to call them hastily to Bethany. But no, He also passed over these 70. We then probably would have selected one of the anonymous disciples who followed Jesus from village to village. They undoubtedly observed and learned His way of ministering and could have employed it in Bethany. But no, Jesus didn't choose any of these either. So that narrows the field quite a bit, leaving us with 2 choices, Mary or Martha. One of these 2 female disciples and close friends of Jesus would this day become a wonder worker. But who would she be, we wonder? Well, there's little wonder whom we would choose. Mary. She was so amazingly, utterly, sweetly committed to Jesus. When Jesus visited her home, she sat at His feet, drinking in His words with insatiable thirst and holy fascination. She couldn't get enough of the living words, spoken words, expounding His written words. And in an extraordinary act of faith, she would later break her most prized possession, a very expensive alabaster box of costly, sweet-smelling spikenard ointment, and anoint Jesus, by faith, for His upcoming burial, while His apostles were still trying to ignore His repeated warnings that a cross, not a crown, lay immediately ahead. Mary's spiritual life had such devotion, such Bible study, such sacrifice, such faith. It's no wonder that all of us would surely have chosen Mary to be Christ's assistant wonder worker. But there was one huge problem with this. On this day, Mary was uncharacteristically out of the Spirit, utterly disillusioned with Jesus over his uncharacteristic neglect of her brother's illness, which led to his shocking death and sad burial. Mary was sitting in her house, deeply offended. Even the news that Jesus had arrived didn't shake her loose from her stubborn disappointment, offense, and unbelief. She just continued sitting there, rising only when Jesus asked specifically where she was. And even in his presence, she didn't snap out of it. She said to him, "Lord, if you had been here, my brother had not died." Clearly, Mary was utterly unusable. This day, Jesus would have to find another assistant miracle worker. But, oh no, don't tell me. I don't believe it. I can't believe it. I won't believe it. Martha was Jesus' only remaining candidate. Her? Mary's less spiritual, less biblically interested, overly occupied with busy work sister, who was inclined to criticize Mary, who misjudged Mary's spiritual hunger for sinful indolence, whom Jesus rebuked? How could Jesus choose Martha to be his channel for a miracle? Believe it or not, reasonable or not, Martha was the one Jesus chose as his channel for the raising of her brother Lazarus. But before he could work through her, he had to work in her, to turn her from the flesh to the Spirit, and from unbelief to faith. Ever the best counselor, Jesus first listened patiently as Martha explained why she felt justified in being offended with him. Quote, "Lord, if thou hadst been here, my brother had not died," end quote, John 11:21. Or, paraphrasing, "Lord, why didn't you come heal your close friend in a timely way, as you have done for so many others who were strangers? You could have prevented my brother's death, but you didn't. Why?" Now, before Martha could recover her faith, this confession of truth, her actual wrong thoughts and sinful feelings, had to be confessed. Only the truth would set her free, according to Jesus' words in John 8:32, quote, "The truth shall make you free," end quote. So Jesus patiently practiced the ministry of listening. Then he reached into her heart to stir and challenge her dormant faith by promising her Lazarus would rise again, meaning that very day. Still dulled by unbelief, Martha didn't rise to his challenge. Instead, she sank back into her comfortable state of deferred expectation, stating she believed her brother would rise, quote, "at the last day," end quote, John 11:24. But Jesus wanted her to believe this day. So he kept working on her heart and her mind. He revealed himself as the very incarnation of life and resurrection standing in front of her. Quote, "I am the resurrection and the life," end quote, John 11:25. That is, he was saying he was the resurrector of dead people and the source who gives life. And then he pointedly asked if she believed this claim. Quote, "Believest thou this?" end quote, verse 26. Again, Martha retreated, dutifully repeating her faith in him, not as life-giver and resurrector, but as Messiah. Quote, "Yes, Lord, I believe that you are the Christ, the Son of God, who is to come into the world," end quote, verse 27. All the evidence declared there would be no miracle this day, but Jesus was undeterred. As he walked the short distance to Lazarus' tomb, Jesus knew it was crunch time, miracle or bust time. faith or failure time. One or the other would follow shortly. When Jesus ordered the tombstone door rolled away, Martha initially refused, exclaiming that after being dead 4 days, Lazarus' body was in an odious state of decay. Then Jesus issued his final challenge. Quote, "Said I not unto thee," referring to his "I am the resurrection and the life" statement spoken only minutes earlier, "that if thou wouldst believe, thou shouldst see the glory of God." End quote. Verse 40. Finally, hearing these words of Jesus, Martha surrendered and put her trust in him to do as he said. Having believed in him for 3 years, she chose to believe in him one more time. That is, to supernaturally revive her dead brother's decaying body. Not at the last day, but this day. So, she authorized the stone's removal, and moments later, he that was dead came forth, says John 11:44. Summing up, that day, 2 very unlikely things happened. First, Lazarus' corrupting corpse revived. Second, this miracle happened through a most unlikely human channel. Not the apostles, not the 70, not Jesus' anonymous disciples, and not even Mary. It happened through Martha. Martha, the barely spiritual one, the often carnally minded one, the one we would all vote least likely to become a miracle worker, or, more specifically, a human channel for Jesus' miracles. But there's more here. Since the raising of Lazarus from 4 days of entombment was Jesus' greatest miracle, we conclude Jesus' greatest miracle was enabled by one of his least likely followers. Let's apply this lesson. Martha symbolizes millions of Christians today least likely to be chosen as a channel of Jesus' compassionate miracles, ministries, or blessings. Someone like me, or you. Your family may consider you a least likely Christian, and say so. Those in your church may agree. Even your friends may feel the same way, even if they wouldn't say it. The devil may also rate you as spiritually inadequate. He may bring many reasons to your mind why Christ simply could not do anything wonderful, a ministry, a mission, a church, a healing, a conversion, or other mighty works through you. And why? Because you have failed before. You have sinned before. And you are not a Bible scholar, or you are not a gifted teacher. You are not an eloquent preacher. You are not a worship leader. You are unknown, or undistinguished, or not well educated. You hold no office. You are not even an elder or a deacon. You are just a congregant, a nobody, a Martha Christian. You may agree with these discouraging assessments, or your view of your spiritual potential may be even lower. But now, something has changed. New evidence for faith has been presented to your mind from John 11. Standing before your mind's eye is Martha's surprisingly triumphant experience. Her faith-prompted choice to allow Lazarus' tomb door to be moved was pivotal. It opened the way for Christ's greatest miracle. If Jesus used Martha to bring about his greatest wonder, I wonder what wonder he may work through you, if you will just believe him and respond to his challenge in this very message, and remove the tomb door of unbelief from your heart. You know, that stony, cold barrier that stands between you and the miraculous divine aid you may desperately need at this very moment for yourself, or for a loved one, or for a neighbor, or for a close friend. But don't overreact Don't try to be an apostle or one of the 70 or some better-known disciple or even Mary. Just be Martha, Christ's most unlikely miracle worker. Then obey Him, pray, and believe. And finally, watch in wonder for the extraordinary wonder He creates through your ordinary faith. A miracle, or a deliverance, a healing, the return of a prodigal son or daughter, a new ministry, a new Spirit-led mission, a flourishing gift of the Spirit, a church plant, or some other wonderful thing. And I wonder what wonder that will be. Well, that's all for today, my friend. For more information about my books, courses, teaching videos, and devotional messages, please visit us at greghinnantministries.org. That's GregHinnant ministries.org. And also at Greg Hinnant on YouTube and Facebook. And may Jesus richly bless you. Maranatha, He comes.